Hello, I'm Professor Margaret, and you're listening to Journey into an Unknown World. Some of you may have been following me for quite some time and know that I can talk about a lot of topics. A very long time ago, I did talk about fairies and elves and things like that, and I thought it was time that I should talk about it again, bearing in mind that we have many young children who are now very psychic. So I'm going to talk about my childhood experiences with fairy, elves, pixies, gnomes and so on, and give you some understanding that your child may well see them. And I'm hoping, having listened to me, that you will have an open mind with them and encourage them to realize that they really do exist. So here's a few stories that I had. When I was very young, probably 4, I was sitting out in the backyard of the apartments where we lived near a bush, and there wasn't any wind or anything like that, and I was just sitting there like children do, fiddling. I think I was playing with the dirt or something, and suddenly I heard a rustle in the bush, so I looked over, and then I heard a little tiny voice say to me, "You should take your mummy to Marks and Spencer's so she can buy some shoes." And I looked where the voice was coming from, and there was a little face peeping through the leaves at me. It couldn't have been more than 5 inches, no, that wouldn't be right, 5 centimeters big. So I thought, oh, I can't say it wasn't there, so I stared, and I started to get up, and she disappeared. So what did I see in that face? It had a pointy nose, it had pointy ears, it was definitely feminine, voice was feminine, but when I really pulled the leaves apart and looked for the face, I saw nothing. It was gone. Wherever it was, it disappeared, and I was quite amazed with it, but sufficiently impressed to go into my mother and say, "We have to go to Marks and Spencer's now to get you some shoes." Well, of course, she told me, "They don't sell shoes, darling." And I said, "Well, this fairy told me to take you there and get some." And she said, "Fairy? You saw a fairy?" I was like, "Yes, I did." She, "Well," and you could tell by her facial expression, "Well, okay, perhaps we'll go tomorrow." It was pushed aside. But actually it turned out that very same day that she realized she needed to go to the bank. So of course I went along with her, and she got to the bank, and when she got to the bank she said, "Oh, you know what, I do need to go down to Marks and Spencer's because I need something for myself." So we went down there, whatever she was looking for she got, and actually on the way out we had passed some shoes, but she hadn't been focused on it. So I said, Mummy, we have to go and look at the shoes now." And of course she looked at me and she said, "Shoes?" I said, "Yes, remember the fairy said you could find some shoes here." So I dragged her over by pulling her hand over to the area where the shoes were, and sure enough there were some canvas sandals that she was able to put on, which had a little bit of a heel, which was just fine for her. And I remember her trying them on and being amazed that they fitted and that she could stand in them and walk without them hurting her. So yes, she got some slippers, and we went home. Years later I talked to her about that, and she said, "That did amaze me that you could do all that," but she said it couldn't have been a fairy. So she said maybe it was an angel or a spirit guide, because by then I was a medium, so we could talk about those things. And I said, "No, it was a fairy because it had a pointy nose and pointy ears." And she just laughed and pushed it away, and that was the end of the conversation. But it was enough for me to remember it in detail, to know that I had seen a fairy. There was this knowing inside my being that this was what I'd seen, even though I'd only seen the face. Well, another time I was older, my parents had been arguing as usual, so I got on a bus and I'd gone up to the common land where there was lots of trees to sit under. And I was sitting there really reading a book, and I suddenly felt something on my socks. So I looked down, and sure enough, there were a bunch of ants crawling over my foot. I immediately wanted to get up and move away, and a voice spoke to me. It was the voice of Socrates, I learned later, but he told me, don't move, stay there. So I did. And sure enough, those ants crawled off me back down onto the earth. I didn't have to brush them off or do anything. And then it was as though he came into my head and made my eyes like magnifying glasses. And I suddenly realized that some of these ants were actually tiny, tiny little fairies. Now, if you think how small an ant is, and then you think how small a fairy is, it doesn't seem possible, because we tend to think of them as bigger because we're bigger. But it brought me to understand at that age that fairies were able to change their shape, their size, disguise themselves as an insect, and with Socrates' help, to understand the philosophy and theology of the archangels all the way down into the fairies, gnomes, elves, and so on. And what he explained to me was that as the ants have a routine where they all know their role in the survival of their nest, and so they would, some of them would be carrying food, some of them would be fighting off attackers, some of them would be carrying the eggs to a safe place, and so on. He explained it all to me, and I was fascinated while watching all these ants moving around in the dirt. And I noticed that amongst the dirt was some of these tiny fairies, not so many, but I realized that they were communicating with the ants, and they told them to get off my foot. Isn't that amazing? Well, of course, yet again, I went over and told my mother, and my mother said, oh, you have a vivid imagination. I was to hear those words from her throughout my life. Even though I had proved to her I was a well-known medium, I had lots of clients in England, gave lots of talks and lectures in mind, body and spirit events and so on and so forth in the 60s, to her, my mediumship was great with spirit guides, but fairies, elves, gnomes, no, they don't exist. That's in the category of Santa. Well, time went by, a little older, probably in my middle teens to late teens. I was up in the same area, and I was laying under one of the trees looking up at the sky. I like to do that, get away from the negativity of the world and the people around me. And by then I'd really learned to channel and be a medium. And so here I am looking up through the trees, and I suddenly notice there are fireflies around because it's early evening. And I'm looking at the fireflies, and then I realized that they had legs. And I looked closer, and I realized again I was looking at another type of fairy, and there were 3 of them flying around, and I could hear their voices, but I couldn't understand them because it was so squeaky somewhere. And so I don't know, I think it was their own language at that time. I thought it was anyway, or I just couldn't hear what they were saying because their voices were so soft and so squeaky that I couldn't really hear them. Another time when I was taken by the church on a trip to an area where we have a lake, and it was a church outing, and I was looking at these great big dragonflies, and I'd never seen a dragonfly before, and I was fascinated by them. And again, it was late in the day or early evening. The sun was still up, but it was about to go down before we all piled into the bus, and someone was calling me, and I realized I was just totally fascinated by these wonderful insects. And then as I started to move to get up, 3 of them came at me, and I thought it was interesting that I'd seen 3 fireflies, and now I'm seeing 3 dragonflies. And as they fly towards me, I can see their faces and their legs and arms. And I wanted to just sit down and see if I could communicate with them. But my pastor was saying, "Come on, you have to get on the bus, Margaret, we're waiting on you." So I had to get up and leave. And as I looked over my shoulder leaving, they flew away, and they looked just like dragonflies. Didn't look like a fairy at all. Well, I didn't tell anyone on the bus because I thought I'd sound stupid. I was old enough to feel that I must have been about 14. I know I was getting confirmed in the church soon. So that was another secret that I took to myself. Another thing that I saw many, many times in grassland, in parks and places like that, is what my father called a fairy circle. A fairy circle is where the blades of grass grow very strong. They're like dark green, darker than the actual grass that's growing around them. So let's say the grass is only 2 inches tall, that's been cut and mowed. That's all the way down to the dirt, mind you. And these fairy circles may be 6 inches high. They can be very small, like only about 6 inches in diameter, to as much as 15 inches bigger than that, so 20 something, 2 foot across. Now you've got to remember that fairies are small, so it takes a lot of fairies to come together and dance around in a circle to celebrate life, their life. They have their own little events where they come together and celebrate the earth and all that it does. So of course when I got to be that age where I was asking my dad all about these fairy circles, I suppose I was about 8 or 9 when he told me that. I went on throughout my life to see many of these dark green circles of grass in my lawns, in my home in England. Unfortunately, I don't see them in Arizona because there's no grass. But I did see them even when I was in my 40s and 50s, going back to England to visit my family. I would go into the park where I used to go as a child, and sure enough, I would always find these dark circles of grass that were higher than all the rest of the grass that had been cut. And I would stand there and feel it. And when I put my hand on top of the tall grass, I would get this tingling sensation in the palm of my hand. And I knew that there was some kind of healing in that area. So when I was suffering with my parents arguing yet again, even though I was older and long left, they were still at it. And so I didn't want to be in that company. So I'd say, I'm going for a walk in the park, and I go looking for them. And when I put my hand on those fairy circles, I would feel the negativity just shiver and shave away from me in all directions. And I'd get a chill up my spine, and I'd know that I had released my negative energy. And of course, I want you to understand that if you find a fairy circle in the grass somewhere, then please do try what I've just said. Put your hand over, don't touch it, just put your hand above it and wait and see if your hands tingle, and I bet they will. And then you can at least say that you've got some healing from the fairies. So what did the fairies do? And I have to go back to Socrates now. He explained to me that they mix in with the ants because they go down into the burrows and they regenerate the earth itself. Now, of course, in a damp environment like England, there's plenty of water, so there's plenty of grass. So when I was a lot older, about 15, I said, well, what happens if there's no water? How do they survive? Well, at that point, I started to learn about earth, air, fire, water, astrology, numerology, all that kind of thing. And so the spirit guides started to talk to me about how different fairies are really called elementals all the different fairy people, gnomes, elves, they're all in one cluster here, put together as elementals. Some are fire, some are earth, some are air. What is it? Earth, air, fire, and water. Get all those elements that we live with. And so if you find you have a naughty fairy or elf or something, pixies are known to be playful and play tricks on you. So what you need to do when you pick up that you're dealing with one of these negative things, you have to be crafty, because they will pretend that they're the element they are not, another one. Okay, so here I'm going to tell you about something even more interesting. When I was older and married with my children, 4 boys, all raucous, all active, all very, very with it, very positive children, but with situations in my marriage that were not good. It was not easy for us all to deal with someone who was drinking, gambling and lying. And so, there was a lot of discord in our home. And one day we went up to the park, and my children were playing on the swings while I was chatting with some other mother. Didn't even think about fairies or anything like that. And when we get home, we put on the television, and we had sliders in those days for dark and light, so you could change the screen. And we had a slider for volume. This is the kind of TVs they made back in those days. And so here we are sitting down watching TV, and all of a sudden the picture goes really dark. I've lost everything. I'm thinking, oh no, the TV's gone wrong. So I go over to the sliders, and sure enough, I find out the slider's been taken all the way down to the dark, and when I move it back up to where it usually is, I've got a picture. So I go and sit down again, watch the TV. Within 5 minutes, it's gone back down again to dark. So I go over, sure enough, the slider's down, and I realized then at that point, I've got an elemental in the house. But is that elemental earth, air, fire or water? I don't know. However, there's a big clue in the fact that he was playing with the TV. Now, I say very strongly here, I couldn't see the elemental, but I could feel its presence in the room. So I'm walking around looking for it, trying to find it, because they can be seen as very solid and very real. And the thing was, we didn't see it go over to the slider, because we're all looking now, we're watching in case it goes down again for the 3rd time. And while I'm looking around the room, my kids think I'm crazy, and suddenly the eldest one shouts out, "Mum, it's done it again, the picture's gone." So I go over, sure enough, the slider's down, slide it back, and again we can't see this fairy or elf or whatever it is, because we don't know. Well, I gave up trying to find it, so I sat down and meditated a little bit upstairs and asked Spirit to help me get rid of it. And that was when they told me, well, you have to find out its native energy. You have to take it back to earth, air, fire, water. So while the children in bed, I come down into the room quietly, and I put the TV on because I want to see if it's still there. Nothing happens. So later on I thought, okay, I'll have a bath. So I go into the bath, kids are sleeping, and I love to sing in the bath, and so that's what I was doing. And all of a sudden I hear this tapping on the side of the bath. I thought, what's that? And I can't see anything again, but then all of a sudden the water in the sink, not the bath that I'm in, the sink, the tap starts dripping, drip, drip, drip. Now I sit out of the bath and up in the bath and reach out and turn it off and lay back in the bath, and within minutes it's dripping again. And I'm thinking, oh, I have to get the plumber in, but why is it suddenly dripping? It's never dripped before. So I go back up and turn the knob again, and I realize the second time that it's loose. and I tightened it up before. So then I thought, it's that elemental. So I now know it's trying to tell me it's a water elemental. Okay? But I don't fall for that, because I already know that it's going to show me everyone but the one that I want to see, so I can send it back. Well, we had a lot of troubles with the water going on and off, not only in the bathroom, but also down at the sink in the kitchen. So I was getting really, fed up with this elemental playing in our house. My kids had also said that they'd heard laughing in their bedroom at night. I asked them what time. It was sort of like a giggle, they said. I said, how loud was it? Oh, it was quiet, just softly. And they had had a bad night, because every so often some of their toys sounded like they'd been touched, and they were waking up to that noise. So we now know this is an elemental that is playful. So we decide to get together as a family, not the husband, he's out drinking and gambling, but the kids and I get together, and I had a couple of students staying with me as well, so we included them, and we made a little circle for a little seance where we were going to channel whatever energy it was to capture this fairy elemental or whatever it might be. And of course I didn't know if it was male or female or anything. So there we are, we're all sitting in a circle, we got a few candles burned, and we're waiting to see what's happening. And lo and behold, the candles went out. So, okay, here was another sign. It was saying to me, I'm a fire fairy or whatever. So I knew, and I explained to children, it's not water and it's not fire, that leaves earth and air. So now we just stopped doing the circle, can't do anything more because we had the candles and it's gone. So after a little while, a few days maybe, we still got some things going on, and so we decide that we're going to bring in the fans. They create air and they move air, and we thought if we just have that, we'll see if the fans go wrong. Remember, they're run by electricity, so in a way that could not necessarily be right. But they didn't work. We didn't see anything, we didn't hear anything, nothing happened. It was about 3 or 4 days after that I had the windows open and there was no breeze, and all of a sudden all my net curtains, the see-through ones, were blowing as though there's a gale outside into the living room. And I thought, wow, we're going to have a storm. No, there was a sun shining, blue sky, and I looked through the window and there was nothing moving, no waves, no nothing in plants or anything, and yet my window curtains were still flapping away at my face. So I suddenly realized this is the elemental again telling me it's not an air sign. So I'm back, to I've done earth, I've done fire, and I've done air. So it has to be, I've done fire, water, and candles, which is air. I'm sorry, I'll get it out in a minute, the right order. I think you've got the gist of what I'm saying. So there's only one left, earth. So I go out into the garden, I'm on my own, kids are in school, and I build a little area that I would hope will attract it in the grass area. I put some seeds down that I had that were for flowers. I didn't really expect any much to happen, but I just thought I'd put some down to see if he wants to make it a garden. Well, what happened was I came out the next day and there were daisies growing in a circle. Now I had not put down seed. I'd put some sort of lavender or something down. They hadn't taken. But here was daisies popped up. So finally I knew that it was an earth elemental. So what I did then, and you see, by putting seeds down, I'd given it a present. And it had in turn given me a present back of some daisies. And yes, they were in a half circle. It wasn't a full circle, it was a half circle. And so I knew. So at that point, I just sat and meditated by it and said, you have been a naughty boy or naughty girl. I haven't seen you yet. I don't know who you are. And then in my mind, I saw a little pixie. And I think my spirit guides were helping me then. So I talked to it, and I knew that the pixie was a little boy pixie. And I said, in order for you to be a positive pixie, you have to go back to the earth. And the pixie was like, in my mind, saying, I don't want to. And I said, well, I have the power to send you. When you come back, you'll be a positive fairy, not a negative one. Well, and in order to send him back, I had to have another little seance circle. So me and the kids got together that evening with some dirt in the circle, and we poured it into the circle by asking spirit guides to help us. And sure enough, we all sat there watching the dirt, waiting to see if something would happen with the dirt. Well, nothing happened with the dirt, but the bowl got upset. None of us touched it. So it's a physical phenomenon. Only an earth elemental can do physical phenomenon because they are the ones who work with the earth, okay? And try and keep it healthy and wholesome. And so this little pixie was upset. He didn't want to. He'd upset the earth, so he didn't want to go away to live in the trees or whatever for a while and so on. So I told the children to put their hands all over the earth and around the earth because it was all ticked out, because somewhere in that dirt was a pixie, but we couldn't see it. But as we all, and everybody discussed it afterwards, as we all put our hands out like this, all our hands were tingling. And then all of a sudden, there was a tapping noise. The window flew open, and it was gone. No more problems for a long time, maybe 3 weeks. And then, lo and behold, one day, the wind blew, it was back. He'd come back, and what he'd come back with was a very positive energy. My garden was the most beautiful, flourishing garden that year that I'd ever seen it. And he didn't come back on his own. He came back with several others. And all I kept hearing whenever I went out to hang out my washing was little tinkles of chimes. And I couldn't figure out where they were coming from, because I had no chimes up. My neighbor has no chimes up on either side, and so where was the tinkling come from? Well, I never found out. So I think it was their music. Well, of course, if you think about them living on the earth, they've got to have their own fun. They've got to know how the earth is and how to live in it. So I'm here as a witness to tell you that I had many experiences with the elementals thereafter, because I knew now how to capture them. I've been in houses and cleared many houses of earthbound spirits, but I've also found playful elementals of earth, air, fire and water in people's homes, just like there was one in mine, causing a lot of disturbances in the home. And those people were thinking it was an earthbound, when in actual fact it was an elemental. So I'm telling you this so that you know that there is very much a chance you could have a playful elemental in your home who's disturbing the peace in your home. So finding out what it is, you have to send it back to earth. Now, we as children, me and my children, when we were putting our hands up like this, we were all thinking of purest dirt that we could find. Not just a garden, we didn't put plants in it, we just wanted to see pure earth, okay? And so we all visualized pure earth. where that where that elemental went, we don't know. But I suspect it went somewhere where the animals graze, because they're always concerned with the small animals like the rabbits, because they burrow, the moles, they burrow, the mice. There's lots of animals all over the world that live in the dirt. And part of their job in keeping the earth balanced is to provide comfort, love and support to the wildlife that lives in the dirt. Now, if we think about a raging fire, caused by lightning and things like that, the elementals that are of fire will in some way try and help. Now, I've never been near a piece of land on fire, but I did have a situation years later where I was in France and we were going to do a camping, boil some water and make some stew, when some woman came running out going, no, fur, and it was in France. So I, fire, where's the fire, and then I realized that the police were going, da. She called them, and they came, and she told us to put out the fire. And so, of course, we poured the water on the fire and put it out. And the police came, gave us a little lecture and told us we're not allowed to burn anything and so on, because we were camping, and left us under the promise we wouldn't light any more fires. So we had bread and cheese that night. But while the sun was going down, I saw 3 little people, who I have to say were probably elves, moving in amongst the bushes around the trees, looking at us. And I was the only one who saw it, because my company was sleeping in the car already. We've been traveling all day. And I realized, because one of them was going, it was like they'd come to tell me off. Anyway, so we never lit any more fires while we went around France. We had to rely on camping sites that allowed us and so on, where they provided some kind of fire for us to use. Things were different in those days. So I hope by hearing my stories about these elementals, you're understanding that you can't blame everything on earthbound. So here I want to say the difference with earthbounds. When an earthbound comes into your home, it's a whole different thing, because you are using psychometry to feel their body, and who is that body? Is a dead person. That's an earthbound. When earthbounds don't go to the spirit world, or to the astral as it's called, they stay around. So I'm going to give you some examples of the types of things that an earthbound could do. They have the ability, by state of mind, mental, spiritual state of mind, to switch on a light. In other words, to put their hand up and try and put it on physically, it won't happen. But if they mentally push energy underneath the switch and push it up or down, depending which country you're in, then they can switch a light on. And it's frustrating if you're asleep and suddenly the light goes on, I can tell you. Over the years, I've had to go to many houses and clear them of earthbound spirits. Now, people tend to think that the earthbound spirit in the house must be grandma or grandpa or someone who's come to say they're looking after them. But if they are that kind of person, they're not likely to be earthbound unless they've been through trauma. They're more likely to have come to let you know to stop worrying about them, that they've passed into the spirit world. They've come to say bye-bye for good, give you a sense of their presence, maybe a psychological message, and leave, and it's something you know is a symbol for them. For example, if grandpa was a gardener, he might show you the pretty flowers in the garden that he used to work in that remind you of him, and you get that image in your head and you think, oh, it's Grandpa. Okay, and you can just say out loud if you want to, hi Grandpa, thank you for coming back, I'm glad you're fine. But what if Grandpa had died in an auto accident? What would happen? Sudden death, unexpected. He would jolt out of his body, his spirit would stand on the side somewhere, wondering who's had an accident, or he may even know he's had the accident. And immediately the first thing he'll think of is, home, I want to go home. And as he thinks home, his spirit is in the blink of an eye in the home. And maybe you're in the kitchen, you don't know he's had an accident, and he's trying to tell you, I had an accident, I'm here, can you see me, can you talk to me? And you're, not hearing him. And he's frustrated. And then the phone goes and you have the police telling you he's been killed in an accident. So you go trundling off to see and do what you have to do in an emotional state. You're feeling really worried and negative and so on. And how can I afford the funeral? All these things are happening in your mind. And he's following you around and he's getting angry because he's telling you, I'm here, talk to me. Can you hear me? Right? And you have no idea he's there. So after a while, he gets frustrated because he can't talk to you, so he tries to talk to some of the other members of the family, maybe even hanging around in his funeral. Nobody's hearing him, so he wanders off somewhere else. And maybe in time he finds someone who is a medium and gets help to ascend into the light and into the oneness. On the other hand, he might bump into a drug addict, someone who's negative, and they're in a state of trance with their drugs, and he can connect with them mentally, mind to mind, and tell them he's there, and he's trying to tell them he died in an accident, and they're not interested because they're high, and so he thinks, well, when they're down, I'll stay with them and maybe they'll hear me. And after a while, he gets closer and closer in a mind bind to be able to put ideas into the man. Now the man doesn't know who he is because he hasn't met Grandpa, and so the man is responding to, who are you? Get out of my head, I don't want you around me, go away. And if he's strong enough, he'll push him away. So Grandpa wanders on to someone else, maybe a woman this time, and talks to her in the mental way, because he's learning all the time how he can use his spirit to connect to the spirit of those living. And given time, he's getting more and more frustrated. Now, his spirit guides will be around and they will be trying to tell him, come with us, come with us. No, I've got to make sure I'm still here. I want to make sure they know what happened to me. I want to tell them it wasn't my fault. Go away, leave me alone, I don't know you. And the spirit guide cannot stay when they're told go away, because the law of karma is no one fragment shall invade the space of another. So if they're told to leave, they leave. So off goes Grandpa, wandering around a bit more and a bit more, and he has no sense of time, and the years pass, and he's so used to wandering the earth that he thinks this is all the spirit world. And then one day, just by chance, maybe he's 100 years of wandering, maybe he's only 3 weeks, we don't know. But by the time he's done his wandering, to his mind, he is well ready to go somewhere else. And at that time, the spirit guides turn up again and say, okay, you're going to come with us. Take them to the spirit world. And much to his amazement, when he gets there, there's you. Because the years have gone by and you've passed over. And you're like, where have you been? What you been doing? Come on, come and be with Grandma and all the other people, because we're all here to welcome you. Okay, it's just, it takes a long time to get an earthbound to ascend, unless you're a medium. Now, if you're a medium, then what you can do is meditate, talk to them, because you'll feel them with psychometry, you'll feel their energy in the room. You'll know it is there because it feels different from your own energy. Your spirit guides will come to you and help you do this. So you in your mind will start talking to an entity you can't see, telling them, hey, my name is, in my case, Margaret, and I know you're in the room and I know you've been lost. It's time for you to go to heaven. Now, if the earthbound has been around a very long time, they're going to argue with you. And at that point, you don't argue back. What you do is you just say, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. I hear you, I hear you, I hear you, over and over again, until they get fed up with you repeating that. And then you say, well, I'm waiting for you to listen to me so I can help you. And at that point in your mind, you then start to say, I notice behind you is a vortex of light. Did you see it yet? Have a look. Well, they might refuse to look for a while. But if you say it over and over again, you are becoming. Say that. You are becoming. Look around, see the light. Well, in time they will see the light. The light is absorbed into them. The negative is changed, released, and turned into positive, because we take it back to the earth, and that's what the fairies do. They take negative earth energy and transform it back into positive energy. So you can see the fairies, elves, gnomes, and pixies also know when there's an earthbound spirit around. And they will go into negative areas, vortices of negative energy, and change that energy. And if there is earthbounds in that energy, they will be transitioned, they will change into light beings. And then the spirit guides will take them into the spirit world. So you see, I want you to understand here that the elementals are spirit. And our spirit guides, of course, are spirit. Our angels are spirit. Our ascended masters are spirit. There's so many different levels of evolution. Now, if you're a person that really wants to study about your psychic ability, I do have a book called Expanding Images with the Omni Card. Once you've read the text, which explains everything about being psychic, all the psychic senses, how to use them, and so on, then you can play with the book with a picture I have, where you can choose something, a symbol on the picture, and go to the page where that symbol is and read it, and you'll give yourself a mini reading. Okay? And when you've learned that, then you'll be much wiser in dealing with elementals. And yes, there is a pixie on that picture. So when you think about anyone who is trapped because of their mindsets after death, you have to realize just how negative they've been throughout their life. Most of us are not that negative. When we are negative, positive, back and forward, it's inevitable that when we're dying, we will process them into a neutral state, where we can then say, as a result of all that negativity, I learned ABC, and as a result of all the positive, I've become XYZ. Those two meld together, and then you find inner peace. And in that moment of inner peace, your spirit guides, family members will come and help you pass out of the body and then take you to the spirit world. Now, I know a lot of you have lost loved ones with COVID-19. I lost my husband before it was realized, but I knew it was. I use colloidal silver. I do not have the injection. Colloidal silver will kill the virus. In fact, it will kill every virus in your body, even if it's a flu cold, a real one. It will also kill all the bacteria in your bowels. So after you've done a cleansing with colloidal silver, you need to be able to put back in your millions of probiotics and your prebiotics, which are enzymes for the digestive system that you can get from your local health store. colloidal silver I wrote a book about colloidal silver called Coronavirus Explained. Unfortunately, I'm having someone on Amazon, they're blocking it, I think. It hasn't gone up and it's a month. So we're going to look to get it out in another way. If you would like a copy of this, we are giving it away free to the world. So if you'd like a copy of this book, it's channeled from Socrates, Archangel Haniel, and many others that I channel. I channel a lot of people, and they have given you all the information that you need to know about the virus and how to protect yourself and how to kill it and so on and so forth. So if you'd like that book, I'll repeat it again. I have to stop and think because it's not even out there. Coronavirus Explained by me, Margaret Rogers Van Coops. If you'd like a copy to read, I can send you the document before it's put up in an email. So you can write to me, Prof for Professor, then Margaret, Margaret, RVC for my last three names, my surname, at gmail.com. So Professor Margaret RVC at gmail.com. If you send a request that you'd like to have the original copy of this book, we can send you it in a Word doc or in a PDF doc for you for free. And then I don't mind you sharing it, because people of the world need to know it exists and that the information the spirit guides are giving us is real and true. Okay? We don't know what's going on with Amazon. We don't know what's going on with their monitoring all the things that people are writing, but we do know they're not publishing everything. So if you'd like a copy of that book, write to me, Professor Margaret, RVC at gmail.com, and I will happily send you the free copy, because that's how it's going to be given out. And if you happen to speak another language naturally and would like to interpret it into your language so that you can share it with other people, as well as send me a copy so that I can share it with other people, then that is also allowed. It's actually written in the book that there is no limit to who can put it into a different language, so people all over the world can know about colloidal silver and all the other things that Spirit Guide have mentioned in there, in how to overcome all the issues and things that this virus has done to us. So moving back to understanding that these elementals' job is to keep the earth beautiful and pretty, I want you to really realize just how destructive we have been. As fast as they may do their fairy circle, and by the way, the fairy circle, when they dance around like this, is all about generating energy across the whole acreage or more sometime. In fact, if you find really big circles, and I have seen only one that was probably 5 or 6 yards big, just think how many little fairies it takes to keep dancing round in circles to build such a high fairy circle when the rest of the grass is only this high. Okay, they have charged up that whole area, and soon after that, if you go back, you'll see much more growth in the area of the land. But what if we turn up the next day and decide to cut all the trees down? What can they do? They have to move on and find somewhere else, or they have to come back and do their dance, and hopefully some sprigs will come up through the earth and replace the trees that have been cut down. So it's hard work for them. It's not easy. If there's a fire and loads of trees, pine trees, all those kinds of trees are burned, okay, they've got a lot of work to do to refurbish the energy of the earth. And of course, fire is a cleansing, so the elementals that are of fire will make you feel hot when they're around you in your home. Or if you're out meditating and they're about, and they are protecting the trees because they know it's the summertime and it could end up that they could all be burned, they're busy drilling holes and making places where air can go into the ground and nurture the seeds that are deep underneath that the trees have dropped that you would never even think about. So they're working to replace what will happen in the future. Yes, they're psychic. Of course they're psychic. And they can read your spirit. And they can know what you're feeling and thinking when you sit down on the grass. Okay? If you're miserable and sad, then they may be above you in the trees somewhere, showering down little bits of love to you from them. And you might then feel the tree has healed you. Well, the trees do heal us as well. But hey, the fairies live in the trees. Okay? That's why Tolkien had all his fairies, and of course they were large in the movie, but he has all his fairies living in tree houses. Right? Well, I used to climb the trees when I was a child to get above the negativity of human nature. Yes, the world was very negative because I was a war baby born in 1942. And you could do the math. I'm 97 this month. And so, I would climb the tallest poplar trees and old oak trees and elm trees or anything I could find that was tall. And when I got to the top of that tree, I could feel my aura being cleansed and cleared. And though I never saw fairies when I was up a tree, I did get connections with my spirit guides who told me that I was being watched by fairies. I'd look around, but I couldn't see them because I had too much negativity from my upbringing, and I was up there to dump it and stop crying and find a bit of peace. Okay? But I want you to know children love climbing trees and they don't realize that there are fairies up there. Now, fairies can also change their forms to look like something else, like a small bunny rabbit or a frog. That's where we get all those stories from. The prince who turned into a frog, who was loved by a princess who kissed the frog. Well, I wish it was easy as that, but no, it isn't. But they do take guardianship. Some of them, the bigger ones, they do take on animal forms because they've got to keep an eye on you. And, this never happened to me. I'm just being reminded. I had a friend who liked frogs, and she had a pool at the bottom of her garden in England with frogs jumping all over the place. And I was kind of amazed because we watched the tadpoles come out and swim around and go back later and see they developed from lost their tails and developing little legs. It was a real study in nature to see the changes. And while I was looking at that one day, one of my guides came to me and said, "Do you realize they're going through a metamorphosis?" I was like, "What's a metamorphosis?" Because I was only young. And so it was explained to me that there are stages. And then I went up into high school and I learned all about pupas and flies and things like that, and the caterpillars and so on. But there was something about the frog and the toad and their journey that spirit guides made me realize was a struggle to survive. And in the parallels of that, because I was brought up as a war baby, I saw the struggles of humans to survive. And so I learned a lesson at a very young age that we humans are metamorphosing all the time. Now you might say, how can that be? But think about it. You look like an infant when you're born, sleep, sweet, cute, whatever. And then when you're 10, you start to change again. You're growing taller and taller. That's your struggle time. And as you grow taller, hey, there's a change in you. You're developing adulthood. You're getting your parts growing. And when that happens, that is a metamorphosis. Your body's not the same anymore. It's dealing with energy in a different way. And as you mature as an adult, you are yet in it's like coming out of the chrysalis. You're now finally birthed into the real world, where you have to go out there and survive. And when you're surviving, there are so many negative things that seem to keep popping up that you have to deal with. You're struggling. We're not struggling with just living in the way a tadpole is, but yeah, we do have to find the food we want to eat, and so does the frog. Okay? It's not so readily available for us as it is for a frog. Tongue shoots out, there's dinner. But what about the poor little ant or caterpillar, whatever it swallowed? It didn't have a chance, did it? Well, the same is going on with us. There are people who catch different diseases. There are people that die in cars. There are people that drown in oceans. There are people that suffer and lose a life in earthquakes. There's violence on this earth everywhere. And we have to survive it, and to do it, we have to adapt. And when we adapt, there's another metamorphosis, because our body changes. We might put on a lot of weight, or we might lose a lot of weight, depending on what we're doing. And each of us has our own choice in how we're going to survive. And we get older and older, wearier and wearier, possibly happier when we retire because we don't have all those responsibilities. And then we're going to go in the garden and grow plants and cabbages and whatever we want. And we're back to nature. We're back to the elements of earth, air, fire and water. And it is yet again that we may awaken to being able to feel or sense the elementals around, or even if lucky, to be in the right vibration of consciousness psychically to see one peeping at you. So don't tell yourself you can't see a fairy, elf, gnome, pixie and more. Just say to yourself, if there's one around, I'd be very grateful if you'd show yourself to me. Okay? That's all I used to do. I just say, I'm here. If you'd like to show yourself, I just sit quiet and wait. So I haven't told you all my times I've seen, fairies and elementals and so on. But I want you to realize by my stories that I've told you, those are my learning lessons when I really came to understand that they are a part of keeping this world a beautiful place. And now it's our turn. We have to rebuild this earth. We need to plant more trees. We need to stop making paper. We need to stop using all the things that we've used buried in the ground because it's plastic and it doesn't disappear. We don't need fuel anymore the way everybody thinks we do, because we will be moving into sound. Sound, when it's reverberated and resonated, will create light, and that will charge our cars, our planes, our buses, and anything else you can think of. So there's plenty of sound around and plenty of ways to make sound. And so, that will be a cleaning effect on the earth, because we won't have all that fuel in the sky or out of the back of cars or whatever is going on. People won't have to go down in mines and work for the products that they pull out, because we will not be valuing gemstones, coal, coke, or whatever they make out of it. We won't be into, I want to be rich and wealthy. We'll be into, I want to be safe. I want to have people around me who support me and work with me and integrate with me and listen and learn, and I will constantly listen and learn to those who are around me too. And so it's a two-way street, that we are in harmony with one another, and we need that. Right now we're talking about races, and we make a big deal about black is life and so on in some way, or yellow is great and we need it because they're the workers. And I've listened to so many rationalizer people who are under the thumb of restrictions, limitations caused by, in quotes, other people who are white or racist or something. Okay, that's got to go. Our children are showing you there is no place for religion to say we cannot, meditate or be psychic or do anything we want to do because some priest has to do it for us. We can do it for ourselves. So church congregations should be to praise God and always be a part of God, but the formats of the way it will not be in the way it was in the Piscean age. It will be different. It will be metaphysical. And on that note, I'm going to leave you with inviting you to come to a show that Katie Kamara and I do on Saturdays, airing 7 Eastern Time, 4 Pacific Time, when we talk about different topics. We talk for about 2 hours, sharing our information. It's free. You'll find links for it on Facebook, on Twitter. We're up on the next show is about suffering and sacrifice, and we'll be talking a lot about that. I think you should come and have a little listen if you can, because what we say is going to be helpful. So I want to thank you for actually listening to this show, and please do, if you feel so inclined, please do share it. I'll be grateful if you will, because there are a lot of children right now who are seeing fairies and goblins and so on, and we need parents to know they do exist. It's not fantasy like your grandparents told you. Okay, it's real. So you take care, and look out for more shows that I have up on sound. What is it? I've forgotten my own thing. You can see I'm crazy right now because I'm learning technical and I'm not learning very well, so forgive me. Okay, soundcloud.com/Ask Dr. Margaret. See you there. Bye bye.